One day, you wake up and realize you don't recognize the person inside your own head. The voice that's been narrating your entire life starts to sound like a stranger. You try to silence it, but it keeps speaking, keeps reminding you who you are supposed to be. And somewhere in that noise, you begin to wonder, what if the you inside your mind, the story, the identity, the voice, isn't really you? What if the self you've spent a lifetime protecting was only ever an illusion, a fragile story built to make sense of the chaos? This isn't mysticism, it's the science and the psychology of ego death. The moment when the structure of I collapses and consciousness glimpses what lies beneath it. We won't be talking about religion or faith. We're going to explore what happens when the mind's narrator falls silent, through philosophy, neuroscience, and the quiet terror of losing the only identity you've ever known. Because maybe peace isn't found in discovering who you are, but in realizing you were never just someone to begin with. Before we can speak of its death, we have to understand the life of this thing we call ego. The word is used so casually, its depth is often lost. It's more than just arrogance. It's the very architecture of your perceived reality. To grasp it, we have to turn to the thinkers who tried to map its territory. Let's begin with Sigmund Freud. For him, the ego, the Latin word for I, is the great mediator. Imagine your mind as a chariot. The wild horses are the id, the engine of primal drives, seeking immediate gratification. Pulling another way is the superego, your moral conscience, the internalized rules of society, whispering, you should, and you must. And holding the reins, that's the ego. It's the rational part, trying to balance the id's chaos with the superego's idealism, all while dealing with the outside world. Freud's ego is a master of defense, a stressed executive trying to keep the whole thing from collapsing. It is your functional self. Carl Jung, who studied with Freud before breaking away, saw it differently. For Jung, the ego is the center of your conscious identity, a brilliant but small island of light in the vast dark ocean of the total psyche. It's what you know of yourself. But Jung cautioned against mistaking the island for the whole world. The ego is only a fraction of your being. What he called psychic death is a harrowing transformation. It's a process where the ego's supremacy is challenged, forcing it to reconcile with deeper parts of the mind, the self and the collective unconscious, that reservoir of shared myths and symbols. For Jung, this isn't annihilation. It's a radical reordering needed to become whole. Then there's the East. Buddhist philosophy offers perhaps the most radical view. From this perspective, the doctrine of anatta, or non-self, is a cornerstone teaching. The ego isn't a thing, but a process, an illusion born from the stream of thoughts, feelings, and memories that we bundle together and label me. The Buddha taught that this belief in a permanent, separate self is the root of suffering. We spend our lives trying to protect and please this fictional entity, all in service of a self that doesn't really exist as a solid thing. To realize this isn't to deny you exist. It's to see through the illusion of your permanence. And what does modern science say? Neuroscience, with its imaging technology, has found what looks like the biological home of the narrative self, the default mode network, or DMN. When your mind isn't focused on a task, when you're daydreaming, ruminating, worrying about the future, the DMN is highly active. It's the brain's storyteller, the neurological engine of self-referential thought. It constantly builds and maintains the story of you. In a very real sense, the DMN is the architect for the ego. So, we have a portrait from 4 vantage points: a pragmatic mediator, the conscious center of a vast psychic universe, a philosophical illusion, a neurological network humming with the story of I. It's a necessary tool, but as we're about to see, this tool can also become a cage, a filter that shapes our reality, and a profoundly fragile construct. Before we move deeper, if you find meaning in these explorations of the mind, consider staying. This channel exists for those who think, question, and wonder what consciousness really is. Let's keep going. The ego, for all its apparent strength, is fragile. It doesn't choose to dissolve. More often it's broken apart by overwhelming forces that push consciousness beyond its ordinary frame. These are the triggers, the moments the cracks begin to appear. One of the most ancient paths is deep meditation. Contemplative practices are a kind of slow, controlled demolition. Through sustained mindfulness, the practitioner learns to observe their thoughts without identifying with them. They watch the parade of mental events, the planning, the worrying, the judging, and slowly stop feeding them. Each moment of pure observation is a moment the ego isn't being reinforced. Over thousands of hours, this practice starves the narrative self. The internal narrator quiets down. This isn't a violent shattering, it's a gentle dismantling. Another trigger is the existential crisis, an unwelcome, destabilizing visitor. It can arrive after a profound loss, the death of a loved one, the collapse of a career. It can emerge when you confront your own mortality. In these moments, the stories the ego has been telling itself stop making sense. The narrative crumbles. This is the dark night of the soul, a period of meaninglessness where the ego, stripped of its illusions, fractures. It asks, if I am not my job, not my relationship, then who am I? In the silence that follows, the dissolution begins. Then there are the sudden shocks of trauma, a violent accident, an assault, a near-death experience. These can shatter the ego's coherence in an instant. The ego's narrative, which relies on a sense of control, is fragmented. In the face of overwhelming terror, the self can simply shut down, leaving a state of raw, unfiltered awareness. Time seems to stop. The sense of self vanishes. A person feels like they're watching from outside their own body. This isn't a chosen path. It's a brutal, psychic rupture. The mind sacrificing the self to survive. Finally, we come to the most direct trigger: psychedelic substances. Psilocybin, LSD, DMT. They are known to reliably induce states of ego dissolution. Neuroscientific studies show these substances dramatically disrupt the brain's normal function, especially by decreasing activity in the default mode network, the ego's neurological home. By taking the DMN offline, psychedelics temporarily dismantle the brain's rigid hierarchies. The result is a state where the boundaries between self and other, subject and object, begin to melt. Ego death on demand, a chemical key turning a biological lock. Whether through the slow path of meditation, the crucible of crisis, or chemical dismantling, the mechanism is the same. Each is a force strong enough to overwhelm the ego's defenses and shatter the illusion of a separate self. But the ego does not go quietly. It doesn't surrender. Its primary directive is self-preservation, and when it senses its own end, it fights back. This resistance isn't a sign of failure. It's a testament to the power of the survival instinct. This is the wall of fear, the terror of annihilation. The most fundamental fear is of non-existence, not the fear of physical death. This is deeper, the fear of the end of I. The subjective experience is one of utter annihilation. The internal narrator, your constant companion, begins to falter. In its place, a silent, gaping void opens up, and the ego perceives this as the ultimate threat. The mind screams, I am disappearing. I am ceasing to be. This panic is the ego's final alarm bell. With this terror comes the overwhelming sense of a complete loss of control. The ego is the seat of our agency, the rider on the horse. To feel the ego dissolving is to feel the reins snap. It's the feeling of being on a ship without a rudder in a tempest. Every attempt to steer fails. The mind, used to being the master, suddenly becomes a helpless passenger. To defend against this, the mind deploys its most powerful weapon: rationalization. It frantically searches for a label, a diagnosis. I am going crazy. This is a psychotic break. These are not objective assessments. They are defense mechanisms. By labeling the experience as madness, the ego tries to frame it as a problem to be solved. an attempt to put the genie back in the bottle. Think of the ego as a fortress built over a lifetime. Ego dissolution is the earthquake that shakes its foundations. The resistance is the frantic effort to patch the cracks. To deny the ground itself is giving way. Or think of it as a king who has ruled his inner kingdom. Ego death is the revolution. The resistance is the king's final, desperate attempt to quell the uprising. This struggle is not a flaw in the process. It is an integral part of it. The friction that generates the heat of transformation. It is the final, ferocious act of the self-preservation instinct. And yet, sometimes, the resistance fails. The fortress walls crumble. The king is deposed. The internal narrator, exhausted, falls silent. What happens in that moment is the core mystery, a moment of profound surrender. This is the death itself. This moment is not an act of will. It is the cessation of will, a letting go so complete that the one who lets go disappears in the process. It's a surrender of everything, including the one surrendering. The struggle ceases. It is the point of no return. The language used to describe it is almost always metaphorical. The feeling of dissolving like a sugar cube in warm water, the edges of the self blurring, then disappearing into the liquid of pure awareness. It can be a visual of falling endlessly backward into a silent, star-filled void. It's often described as the boundaries of the body melting away. The skin is no longer a container. The air you breathe is no longer separate from your lungs. The distinction between observer and observed collapses. This is not a loss of consciousness. It is the opposite. It is a loss of self-consciousness. Awareness remains, but it is no longer personalized. Pure perception without a perceiver. Experience without an experiencer. Consciousness is no longer a flashlight beam held by an eye. It becomes the entire field of light. Vast, open, unburdened. The character of this experience is a paradox. For some, the dissolution reveals a cold, terrifying void, an absolute emptiness. For others, this same emptiness is blissful union, a merging with the totality of existence. The feeling of becoming one with the universe, with nature, with God. Sometimes, these two poles, the void and the all, are experienced at the same time. An absolute emptiness that feels completely full, a state of being no one that feels like being everything. In this moment, there is no time. Personal history vanishes. The web of memories, regrets, and hopes that makes up the narrative self dissolves. There is only the eternal now, an intensely vivid present. This is why the experience is called ineffable. It can't be captured by language, which is built on subjects, objects, and linear time. It's a direct encounter with a state of being that transcends the very categories we use to make sense of ourselves. No one stays in that state forever. It is transient. The brain's familiar networks re-engage. The internal narrator clears its throat. The self begins to reform. But what returns is not what was lost. The person who emerges from the ashes is fundamentally changed. This is the rebirth, the journey back from the void. The immediate aftermath is often an afterglow, a state of profound peace and awe. The world, once filtered through a worried, defensive ego, now appears vibrant, new, intensely alive. Colors seem brighter. A simple walk in nature can become overwhelming. There's a sense of a heavy burden having been lifted. This has a neurological basis. As we've learned, ego dissolution is tied to a disruption of the default mode network. After this, the brain doesn't just return to its old patterns. It enters a state of heightened neuroplasticity, a window where it can literally rewire itself. Studies on psychedelic-assisted therapy show the experience can lead to sustained decreases in DMN activity. This is like a reboot, a defragmentation of the entire psychic operating system. The brain, freed from its old ruts, has a chance to form healthier, more flexible pathways. But the experience itself is just the beginning. The most critical phase is integration, the conscious process of making sense of it all, of weaving its insights into daily life. Without it, the potential can be lost, or worse, it can lead to confusion, a detachment from reality. Integration involves asking, what did I learn in that state of no self? How can I live now, knowing my ego is a construct? The goal isn't to remain egoless. That would be impossible for a functioning human. The goal is to build a new, more flexible, less defensive ego. An ego that knows it's not the master of the house, but a useful servant to a deeper consciousness. An ego that can hold identity lightly. Life after successful integration is often marked by profound shifts. A diminished fear of death, from having touched a consciousness that feels independent of the individual self. An increased sense of connection to others. The frantic, ego-driven pursuit of status and approval often gives way to a search for meaning. The central problem of me has been seen through, not solved. The perspective has just shifted so dramatically that the problem itself dissolves. The cage door has been opened, and what was a prison is now simply a room, one you can move in and out of with a new sense of freedom. This territory is profound, but it's not reserved for a select few. The path toward loosening the ego's grip is available to anyone. It's not about forcing a cataclysmic death. It's about gently, consistently, turning down the volume of the ego's monologue, allowing a deeper consciousness to be heard, learning how to open the cage door, not with a sledgehammer, but with a gentle hand. Maybe the path begins with mindfulness, the art of paying attention, on purpose, without judgment. Through meditation, or just bringing this quality of attention to everyday life, you create a space between your awareness and your mind. You learn to observe your thoughts as thoughts, not facts. You watch emotions rise and pass like weather. Each time you notice a thought without automatically saying, I am this, you weaken the ego's hold. You are no longer just the actor on the stage. You become the audience. Another path is to spend time in nature. The natural world has a way of quieting the human ego. When you stand before the ocean or under a star-filled sky, the chattering narrative of the self often falls away. These moments of awe are glimpses. They remind you that you're part of a much larger web of life, a single note in a cosmic symphony. A more cognitive approach is to actively question your own stories. The ego is built from narratives. I am a successful person. I am unlovable. I am anxious. These are not truths. They are stories we've learned to tell ourselves. The practice here is to become a gentle interrogator of your own mind. When a strong belief arises, ask yourself, is this absolutely true? Where did it come from? Who would I be without this story? The point isn't to find better stories, it's to see the story-making process itself. Finally, embracing practices that foster connection can dissolve the ego's boundaries. Deep, empathetic listening. Engaging in creative expression where you lose yourself in the flow. Anything that shifts your focus from me and mine to we and ours is a step on this path. These are not quick fixes. They are invitations to explore the possibility that you are far more vast and interconnected than the limited story your ego tells you. They are the keys, waiting in the lock of the cage. This territory is profound, but it's not reserved for a select few. The path toward loosening the ego's grip is available to anyone. It's not about forcing a cataclysmic death. It's about gently, consistently, turning down the volume of the ego's monologue, allowing a deeper consciousness to be heard, learning how to open the cage door, not with a sledgehammer, but with a gentle hand. Maybe the path begins with mindfulness, the art of paying attention, on purpose, without judgment. Through meditation, or just bringing this quality of attention to everyday life, you create a space between your awareness and your mind. You learn to observe your thoughts as thoughts, not facts. You watch emotions rise and pass like weather. Each time you notice a thought without automatically saying, I am this, you weaken the ego's hold. You are no longer just the actor on the stage. You become the audience. Another path is to spend time in nature. The natural world has a way of quieting the human ego. When you stand before the ocean or under a star-filled sky, the chattering narrative of the self often falls away. These moments of awe are glimpses. They remind you that you're part of a much larger web of life, a single note in a cosmic symphony. A more cognitive approach is to actively question your own stories. The ego is built from narratives. I am a successful person. I am unlovable. I am anxious. These are not truths. They are stories we've learned to tell ourselves. The practice here is to become a gentle interrogator of your own mind. When a strong belief arises, ask yourself, is this absolutely true? Where did it come from? Who would I be without this story? The point isn't to find better stories, it's to see the story-making process itself. Finally, embracing practices that foster connection can dissolve the ego's boundaries. Deep, empathetic listening. Engaging in creative expression where you lose yourself in the flow. Anything that shifts your focus from me and mine to we and ours is a step on this path. These are not quick fixes. They are invitations to explore the possibility that you are far more vast and interconnected than the limited story your ego tells you. They are the keys, waiting in the lock of the cage. We have journeyed from Freud's psychoanalytic couch to 21st century neuroscience labs, from quiet meditation halls to the turbulence of existential crisis. And through it all, a single, paradoxical truth emerges. The self we work so hard to build and defend is both a necessary tool and the primary source of our deepest suffering. It is the cage we have built from the stories of our lives. Ego death presents us with a terrifying, liberating proposition that the only way to find true, unshakable peace is to have the courage to let that fortress crumble. Freedom is not found in building a stronger ego, but in seeing through the illusion of its solidity. The process can be frightening, a symbolic death, but what lies on the other side is not annihilation. It is expansion, the discovery of a silent, peaceful awareness that was always there, just obscured by the noise. It's a shift, from identifying as the wave, tossed by the winds of fortune, fearing its crash upon the shore, to realizing you are the entire ocean. The wave was never separate, just a temporary expression of the whole. To find peace, we must sometimes lose the very self we thought defined us. In that loss, a deeper freedom awaits. The ultimate liberation isn't becoming someone new. It's the courage to realize you were never just someone to begin with. If this exploration into the nature of consciousness resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of the mind. And I encourage you to share your own reflections, with patience and curiosity, in the space below.